John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us for Newsmaker. We are all witnessing history right now, but it seems to be coming at us at a dizzying pace. In the span of 2 weeks, an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, President Biden withdraws from the race, and VP Kamala Harris apparently secures enough delegates to replace him at the top of the ticket. Now, she has not named a running mate yet, but stay tuned. This is a good time to be a reporter, so we are leaning on a veteran tonight. Yvonne Wingett Sanchez covered Arizona politics for years with the Arizona Republic, and she is now reporting for the Washington Post. Yvonne Wingett Sanchez joins me now. Great to see you.
Thanks so much. Good to see you.
So I bump into you at the Republican National Convention in an elevator. We're running around doing our thing. What were you doing there? What was your focus?
So I was really trying to get a gut check on how the speeches and the messages that were being delivered from the stage, how they were landing with voters, with the party's most faithful, and what are the issues that are at the top of minds of the party's faithful. And so I was there to talk to people, to catch up with sources from around the country, sort of like batting practice, right? And just to sort of get a feel of like what the vibe is. And I got a pretty good sense. It only lasted for a few days, but I got a good vibe.
Okay, so what was the overarching message, do you think, from the party, and particularly with the selection of jd-vance?
Doubling down, right? Like doubling down on the MAGA brand, on the new generation of what
it's
the
Donald
MAGA brand
Trump's
is going to
party,
be.
no doubt.
It's been Donald Trump's party. Like there is not even a question. There was not a question going into the convention about whether or not it was. It was very clear that this is like perhaps a generational shift, or at least that's the vision that the Republican Party wants it to be. And we saw that in jd-vance.
What do you make of this idea that the two parties have completely flip-flopped? That the Republicans used to be the country club set, the upper crust, all of this business. Now they become supposedly the working class party, and the Democrats are coastal elites, intellectual liberals. What do you make of this shift, and do you buy it?
I don't know that I completely buy it. I mean, it is very clear that the Republican Party is under former President Donald Trump, very much the disaffected voter working class
That's
party.
real. That's
That
happening.
is real. One metric that I use to make that assessment of is who wasn't there. Which country club Republicans from a swing state like Arizona were not there?
Doug
And there were a
Ducey.
lot of them. Karen Taylor Robson.
Yep.
I mean, there were a lot of people who have led the party in this state for decades that were not present. Now, what they would tell you is that they had other commitments, A, right? Or B, that they are working to focus their attention on areas that they can have impact on. That might be the state legislature. That might be county races. That might be, you know, for right now, kind of cooling off and helping with the fundraising side of things and like not making a big deal out of themselves.
Yvonne, do you think they're sitting there, the Duceys of the world, Karen Taylor Robson, who was a big Trump supporter, as you know, big financial donor.
And continues to be.
Yes. Do you think that they are sitting back thinking, this Trump thing will pass, it will fade? Are they thinking that it's going to be a Bush party again at some point?
I'm not going to speak for them. I can't speak for them. I do think that there is a mindset, and there has been a mindset for a very long time with people who support those types of candidates, those types of conservative figures, that nothing is changing. The party that we see now is the party that has been.
This is not John McCain's party.
No, it hasn't been for a long time.
Okay. We see Joe Biden drop out. I understand the narrative that he did this for the country, but he was effectively pushed out. The funding was drying up. People were really leaning on him to get out. Luminaries of the party. How do you read his exit, and how the policies of Kamala Harris may be so attached to Joe Biden? Can she carve her own path to maybe grab more independent voters?
It's a really good question, and these are two big themes that my colleagues at the Washington Post have been writing a lot about over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, I think the answer is she definitely can cut her own path.
In 100 days?
She's got a very compressed timetable to do that on. She came right out of the gate with a lot of support, like full party support, a lot of money, a lot of support. Does that last, right? Is this a sugar high, or is this some sort of long-term lasting dynamic? And that's obviously what we're all going to be watching for.
You've done this a long time, so you know when the candidate hits the scene and people may not know a lot, they love the new face, a younger face. These are things really in her favor.
Maybe, maybe not.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, is the country ready for a female minority president?
Do you think people obsess about this stuff, about race?
I think that there is a big conversation that has been happening for a long time about the diverse hiring choices or the student acceptance rates at not just colleges, but schools, and how that might cut into the opportunity of non-minority students or young professionals. I do think that that is a conversation that has been happening at the kitchen tables and in the living rooms of families for a really long time and is finally breaking out into the open.
As a woman, Jamaican descent, but African American viewed by the public, could she pull back some of these people who have defected to Donald Trump? They've moved to Donald Trump. Some of the black voters, there's evidence that he's doing much better with them. Could she pull that back and take that away?
Possibly. I mean, it remains to be seen. I mean, we need to watch what her message is going to be, like how she makes people feel on the very real issues of the economy, the grocery bills, the back to school supplies. I mean, the gas prices. People can't afford to take their families on vacation. Those are the same messages that resonate with a white, working class voter. That resonates with a non-white family.
Okay, now conversely, we talked about Kamala Harris has 100 days to kind of maybe change her appeal, moderate it some. But conversely, Republicans don't have a lot of time to define her. I mean, they are also on a time frame. Who does it favor? Do you have any idea?
No. I'm not in the business of making predictions. I think it's a jump ball. It feels very much like a jump ball.
I agree with that. And anybody who doesn't think that this dramatically changed the dynamic of the race, I don't think they're paying attention. Because I think now, Biden was fading. There's no question. Just his mental acuity. She is vibrant, young, and articulate. You may not like what she says, but she's going to be a better campaigner than Joe Biden would have been.
When the news broke shortly after we probably each had landed back in Phoenix after the convention, it immediately felt like a completely different party.
Totally agree. And in a different race.
In a completely different race, and Democrats, for the first time in a very long time, felt like, all right, we're back in the game. It was like relief, and then it was like, all right, we can, we're doubling down, we're in it, let's go. Okay,
so Mark Kelly, as we're taping this on Wednesday, who knows what could happen over the weekend, because every weekend has seemed to bring a new seismic event. He's in the mix, seriously. Do you agree?
Yeah. There's a reason I'm not leaving my iPhone unattended. Yeah, I mean, he is 100% in the mix. He is being vetted as a potential vice presidential candidate.
You think it's between he and Shapiro?
That's what it seems. I mean, that's the vibe. That's the sense. There are other moderate Democrat governors who perhaps are in the mix. I mean, we've seen some of the reporting about that. It does seem like Senator Kelly is getting intense interest. I mean, he comes from a pretty important state. He brings a biography and a narrative that you aren't going to find in a lot of these other potential contenders.
Do you believe that Arizona is still a center-right state, or do you think it's full purple?
No, it is a center-right state.
You do believe that?
Yeah. It is. I mean, it trended blue for a time, or Democrats picked up a lot of these seats since 2018 because of Donald Trump. It was that MAGA trend that accelerated maybe some of the political changes that, you know, a lot of people thought we wouldn't be here for another decade or two, right? Is this a lasting thing, or is this a temporary bump, right? People, political scientists, pollsters, they universally agree that this is a center-right state. And Democrats have seen tremendous gains, either because they were running against candidates who had really high unfavorables, or just like sort of this political environment that might just be like a temporary thing. So,
let me ask you about the democracy beat that you're on with the Washington Post. What's the focus, and particularly with Arizona?
So the democracy team began in 2022. The Post decided to invest in real deep coverage of democracy in America. And so we have reporters all over the country, Washington, D.C., my colleague Patrick Marley in Wisconsin, reporters in Georgia, I'm here. Swing states, and states that played very crucial roles in 2020, and states that were central to conspiracies and misinformation and disinformation about voting and the election outcome. Correct. And so day to day, like, I don't always know what my day is going to look like, but I really try to focus on the administration of voting, the rules, the procedures, the people who are play key roles, key figures to that process, the disinformation, the conspiracies, how they're playing on the ground. Some of it's politics. I do some politics reporting, but largely I try to really focus on, you know, not the horse racy stuff, but like the big stuff.
Okay, so when you look at Maricopa County's elections, which was central because it's the biggest piece of the pie. That operation, I went down there and did a whole thing on early voting a couple of weeks ago and how it is handled. That thing struck me as pretty buttoned up, actually. Your take?
Maricopa County has invested a lot of money, a lot of manpower in its election systems. Those systems are still run by humans. We all know there could be natural causes, natural issues, natural things that can happen outside of like human error.
Elections
there could be
are
flooding.
Imperfect.
There could be an earthquake. There could be cyber attacks, right? They have prepared for those sorts of scenarios. They had problems, very real problems in 2022. We saw what happened with the CrowdStrike attack not so long ago, just a few days ago. Systems were affected, poll books were affected. They have plans for that, right? Real problems happen. The question becomes, how are the real problems turned into not real problems? And then how does that spread like fire, not just across Arizona, but across the country? How do those things make their way into litigation or into lawsuits that then become like very problematic?
Do you feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose when you're covering this stuff?
Every day.
One of the things that struck me about the voting process here in Maricopa County is at every step there are Republicans, Democrats, and/or independents watching, and they are encouraged. If anything is nefarious or weird that they don't understand, they object. I could not believe how many of these steps there are party people watching. Plus, at the end, there is a hand count of randomly selected precincts or candidates where they hand tally the vote and match it up against the real vote. That strikes me as kind of a fail-safe that if there were fraud, you would see it right then.
It strikes people who are suspicious of elections as potentially vulnerable to fraud. You don't know every single person.
Is this born of not understanding the process? Because it's a Byzantine kind of backroom, even though they've tried to be open and cameras and everything, a lot of people don't understand it.
Right. I mean, it is complex. I think you have a combination of people who don't understand it, a combination of people who don't want to understand it, and a combination of people who are just can never just be reached. And that's sort of where my job comes in, is like trying to explain how all of those dynamics and people and motivations are working together to bring us to a moment. Now, one of the vibes that I definitely picked up on at the Republican National Convention, and we wrote a story about it, is the acceptance of the election results. If Donald Trump wins, will they accept those results? And the resounding answer was yes.
What if he loses? We're going to leave it there. Yvonne Wingett Sanchez, now with the Washington Post. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
You too.
Good luck in the election cycle. When we come back, Fox 10 investigator Justin Lum will join me to talk about his investigation into fatigued truck drivers behind the wheel and why some drivers are exempt from rules limiting how many hours they can drive each day, and why that loophole may be putting the public at risk. Back in a moment on Newsmaker Saturday. Welcome back to Newsmaker. Truckers have a tough job, a vital job, keeping goods moving across the country. But truckers are not robots. They are humans, and they can get fatigued. And too many hours behind the wheel can put themselves and others out on the road in peril. Justin Lum just did a fascinating story on this, and he joins us now. Justin, your story talks about a loophole in kind of the short hauls, something under 150 miles.
Yeah, exactly, John. And you put it together perfectly that, you know, we rely on the trucking industry in our country, but this, what we found was a federal exemption that allows truckers that are hauling agricultural commodities to not be timed within the radius of 150 air miles. So from the start time and location where they're hauling those goods to the point they are at, as long as they are within this bubble, within this radius, they can go for as long as they want.
So that would be Tucson to Phoenix, Phoenix to Tucson. You could, under this rule, this loophole, you could just keep driving that over and over. And is it up to the companies or the truckers to monitor how much time they're spending on the road?
Well, in this case, and we take you back to June of 2021, where this milk tanker truck crashed into a line of cars, 8 vehicles involved, 4 dead, 11 injured.
That happened where?
This happened right on the Loop 202 near 52nd Street. And
yes.
It was this huge explosion. You could see the flames from the Arizona Department of Transportation cameras, and we had covered this very tragic case. But it was the findings that came out 2 years later that really struck us, that in this case, these drivers are paid by the load, not by the hour. So their timesheets may say one thing, but investigators found that they were really working a lot more than the hours that they put down.
Why was this exemption carved out, the 150-mile exemption, where you're kind of unlimited? You're a little bit on the honor system.
It goes back to 1995, and it was originally 100 air miles. That was the radius. It got extended. Obviously, this helps in the favor of the agriculture industry. And in this case, in June of 2021, it was milk by the load, very important, but it can be livestock. It could be horses. It could be fish, feed, agricultural supplies. They can operate under this kind of no man's land. Now, you would hope that the company they work for had an oversight policy, fatigue management policy to say you cannot drive more than 60 hours in a 7-day period or 11 hours in one day. But the question is, how many people are actually honoring that policy? And NTSB says this company, Arizona Milk Transport, did not do a good job of enforcing these rules.
Let's take a look at the NTSB. You had a clip of their dissection
findings, yeah,
of what happened.
This quote really explains how this works, and it was really an aha moment. Like, is this real?
Okay, let's take a look.
Say I haul milk, raw milk. I have an exemption, and when I leave the 150-mile radius, what happens? What kicks in?
Then the hours of service kicks in. But you could be operating all day long, Chair Hummondy. All day you could be working 15-hour day or whatever, and then you leave the circle, the bubble, and then the clock begins. So that's very
right.
troubling.
Okay, Justin, in the case of the fatal crash on the 202 at 52nd Street, what was that driver's log? What did it look like? How much had he driven that week?
Oh, well, he was working more and more in the weeks leading up, sometimes more than 80 hours a week and 5 to 6 hours of sleep opportunity. That's what investigators are saying. In speaking to him, he had a family at home, sometimes waking up 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning to be with his kids, but getting home that previous night around 2 or 3 in the morning after such a long day of work. And we have the dash cam video that we showed in our story, but the moments leading up to the crash where it looks like he's in a daze leading to the cause determined by the NTSB.
He's not asleep, but
not asleep
he's
or on the
just
phone.
glazed over.
It seems that way from what we see. His eyes are open, and obviously the cause was fatigue. Now, important to note that drivers, the top violation is hours of service in North America. That is the top violation. But you assume most of these drivers are operating under the rules that they need to stick to. It's just that this exemption here kind of puts everyone in another category, and they're not being tracked the same way. That's the issue that NTSB had.
Okay, and you know, it's tough to fault the trucker because you can see where a guy, he had a family, he's trying to maximize his time, make money for his family. He's going to push it. That's human nature, right? To make more money. Is it incumbent upon him to log this or his company? And is the company looking the other way so that they move more stuff?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it's a combination of both the driver and the company. I mean, clearly the NTSB here said that they should have done more to make sure there was a fatigue management policy in place and educate these drivers on really taking their rest seriously. And at the same time, if these drivers allegedly pencil whipping their timesheets saying that they worked 12 hours in a day, but really they're working a few more hours. I mean, that's
because they get paid by the load, not by their hours.
Exactly. So you could put the same hours every week, and no one says a thing. But the NTSB had to reconstruct the driving from and security video at the location, Arizona Milk Transport, to really put together the facts, how long they were working. And it was a lot more.
He was not criminally charged.
He was not charged. DPS submitted a charge recommending that he be charged with manslaughter. Maricopa County Attorney's Office declined to prosecute, citing non-reasonable likelihood of conviction after reviewing the findings by NTSB, the dash cam video. Not sure where things kind of fell out of place as far as criminal charges, but they did not feel that they had enough.
There was a civil settlement.
There was a civil
settlement. In the millions,
settlement. Yeah.
Multi-millions.
Yeah, and these family members, yes, that they've settled with the company. There's also another pending litigation, a lawsuit with the manufacturer of this truck. But these families, I mean, they're heartbroken.
Yeah.
One of these people, they cannot do what they can do for the rest of their life as far as physically, bed bound and being taken care of by their family members.
We've got a couple minutes left. What's the fix? What's the proposed fix to keep drivers from overdoing it and being fatigued on the road?
Well, the NTSB just recommended to the U.S. Department of Transportation to make and implement a driver fatigue management system. But U.S. Department of Transportation is basically saying they don't have the data collected to prove that they can make the changes to this law. It's a circle of bureaucracy with a dead end.
Okay, so the old rule was 100 miles. Then they stretched it out to 150.
Correct.
Everybody's trying to get more out of less, right?
Yeah, it seems so, yeah. So we'll see what happens next, but this is a sad case.
We've got 30 seconds. What's the next step in all of this? What are you going to be looking at?
Well, perhaps a state lawmaker maybe takes note of this and tries to make a change where these motor carriers operating under the AG exemption, they get tracked so we can see what the severity and the crash rate is. And that can be sent to Congress to show them that there needs to be changes.
And technology may help down the line too, identify a fatigued driver and shut it down.
Exactly. Collision avoidance technology is another recommendation by NTSB in this case.
Okay, great job. Great work.
Thank you,
as
John.
always. Justin Lum, we're back in a moment on Newsmaker. Thanks again to Yvonne Wingett Sanchez and Justin Lum for joining us on Newsmaker. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker.